Well, it's time for me to do, I guess, a rant about this situation in Quebec with the French people and the French language. You know, I was born in Montreal, and my first language is French. I don't dare speak in French to anyone because I speak a real French. I speak proper, well pronounced French with the actual words that should be in a sentence. And I'm amazed to see that Quebec's got a really big attitude problem and other things and prejudice against English people. But first of all, the reason why I don't speak in French at all is because whenever I attempt to speak French with people, I speak really good French. I pronounce all my words. I don't skip out words. I don't create words that are not really French words at all. When I go out in public and I listen to people speaking in what they call French, the French language is such a disaster. So many people speak a language they've completely made up on their own. They don't pronounce anything properly. They fabricate words that are non-existent in the French language anyway. It's an absolute disaster. I can't talk to anybody on the phone in the government in French because no one ever speaks the same. No two people, it seems to me, that speak French ever speak the same French language, because what they're speaking isn't French at all. It's just completely. I mean, if you listen to Newfoundlanders when they speak in real Newfoundland, you can't even understand a word they say. Well, it's the same thing for me in French. And I've wondered what's going on in Quebec with this racism against English-speaking people. I was born in Montreal, and I noticed there's lots of English people that were born in Montreal. And the French, especially the government, has a terrible attitude against people. And it really amazes me that they do this. Just a second, because there's a guy walking by my car, so I don't know if he wants something. I guess not. So what I discovered, I guess I lost track here. What I discovered is that here they are talking about protecting the French language. And I thought, well, how about if they start teaching people how to speak French properly? And maybe I asked the government, why don't you offer French lessons for people that want to learn to speak French? But I'll tell you something, the reason why no one can learn to speak French is that any person that is not French attempts to speak French here with anyone else, they're going to be lost. As they're learning the language, they're going to try to understand the people they're looking at, and they're speaking this so-called French. And they speak so terrible that there's no, I can't see anybody that's not French trying to learn this language here. So here you are Quebec's worrying about losing their identity and losing their French language. Well, I think that for the case of most French people, they've already lost their French language because they sure don't speak French. They speak a completely slurred slang, sloppy language they don't even take the time to even pronounce their words. Like, I mean, I've heard of being lazy, but being so lazy that you can't even pronounce your words properly. So anyway, this is just a bit of a rant. And if you're coming to Montreal and you want to deal with the government, be careful, because they are really ignorant towards English people. I mean, really bad. The hatred towards the English here in Montreal is quite amazing, and it's quite shocking because. Like let's say you're talking to a government agent on the phone, and they speak good English, but they'll give you the title of their agency in French. And I asked them, well, what does that mean? What are you saying? And they continue to repeat it in French. They're so ignorant. They will not tell you the English version of the title of the department you're talking to. They'll only say it in French. And I'll look at them and I say, I have no idea what you're saying, so I don't know who I'm talking to. So I end up hanging up because if they're too rude to tell me what is called in English the title of their agency. Now, one thing that shocks me is that if you come to Quebec, I don't care what language you're speaking, what part of the world you're from, they're going to treat you with dignity and respect. They're going to go out of their way to get translators or whatever they have to do to communicate with you if you're from another country or another place. But if you're a Canadian and you're English and you arrive in Quebec, you are treated like garbage. The Quebec government is this political agenda that they had, where they drove the French and the English against each other. So that was very effective in destroying the unity and the strength of Quebec when the Quebecers were You know, it's actually the French that were driven against the English, because the English really don't have a bad attitude about French people. They're just amazed at how stupid things are here, where French people, for some reason, seem to think that they're superior, and they don't realize this country was created by French and English people, not just the French. Anyway, I just felt like doing a little bit of a rant, because if you ever come to Quebec, you are going to encounter a huge prejudice against English-speaking people. And it's really, really bad. Don't go to the government Quebec websites, because they'll say, oh, you can click on the English tab, and you click on the English tab, and then you get a page that opens up in English with a long letter saying that these services are only available in French. If you go to any government agencies, including motor vehicles, you know, for getting a driver's license, they don't give out anything in French. And I said to them, here you are, you're exchanging English driver's licenses to a Quebec one, but you don't even give them a booklet in English that describes the rules of the road in Montreal. And if you're ever driving down the road and there's a hazard up ahead and they got these warning signs out, well, be careful, because the English people, well, you're allowed to crash into the French people, because when you go down the road, you're not going to be able to read any of these warning signs, because they like to put them just in French, because they seem to think that the 70% of the people that speak English in Montreal, well, they don't matter. It's okay. You know, you can drive down the road and there could be a gigantic boulder, a rock, or a hole in the road, or whatever else, and there's signs about it, but hey, don't warn the English, just warn the French. You know, this is not a good way for French people to go around making other people like them, and make the French people think that they are, you know, they're really nice people. Well, they might be really nice to other French people, but what a terrible prejudice they have here. So, Quebec, shame on you. I mean, I'm a Frenchman. Je parle français et je vais pas parler en français. I speak French, and I won't speak in French to anyone, because I can't get anyone to respond with a clean, proper French that I can understand, unless, of course, they're my age. Because anybody, I think, under 40 now speaks a billion different versions of French, but not French. And this is a truesoldier.com. Bye.